Yo, what's up, YouTube? This is Boxingwave, and we are back with another tribute video. All right, this is also going to be like a tribute. I actually just dropped the video of Mills Lane. Rest in peace to Mills Lane, the late great Mills Lane, who just passed away at 85. So be sure to check that out if you haven't already. All right, but here we have news of the 2023 Boxing Hall of Fame inductees. And two of these guys specifically, Tim Bradley and Carl Froch, two of my favorite fighters of the past generations. I want to mainly discuss them, but I don't, I want to drop some of the other inductees. You have Rafael Marquez, who also is going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. You got Alicia Ashley from Jamaica, who I believe was the oldest female boxing champion of all time. All right. And then you also have Laura Serrano, who I believe is the first Mexican female boxer champion. All right. So, and then you also have Joe Goosen, all right, who's actively training, still training fighters, who also has been inducted to the Hall of Fame. Good for him. All right. Great trainer. All right. So you have a lot of people here. I'm not sure if I'm going again. You guys know I went this past year in probably one of the greatest Hall of Fame inductions of all time. I've been waiting for Carl Froch to get inducted. I've been waiting for Tim Bradley as well. But if I'll see which weekend it is and if I can make my way up there. I had a great time this year going up there. I've been up there before a few times. But this year was the first time I actually went to an induction ceremony and had an amazing weekend. I met great people. It's always a great time going up in upstate New York, and they always have a fight event and a ton of events over the weekend. I got to meet a ton of fighters. It was just a great time. So if I can make it, I will make it. Now, congratulations to all the inductees. And again, this video is mainly about these two special fighters to me. Carl Froch, I want to start out with him because Carl Froch, when I think about it, Carl Froch has to probably be my second favorite British fighter of all time after Lennox Lewis. If you want to count Lennox as a British fighter, or a Canadian one or whatever, Carl Froch is number two. I had to really think about it because there's other fighters that I loved. You guys know I'm a big AJ fan. But Carl Froch and what he's done in his resume and the fights and the excitement that he's given me over the years, the surprises. He's fought some of my favorite fighters, some that I rooted against Carl Froch. He had an incredible career. And I've been saying it for years now that he should be a boxing Hall of Fame inductee. I know a lot of people love Joe Calzaghe, and there's a lot of Calzaghe fans, but I think Carl Froch, in my opinion, has a better resume. I know he has losses on his record, but he has fought so many prime fighters in his career. I mean, prime fighters. Gave a lot of good fighters that had great careers their first loss. And we're going to go through that. Let me pull up the resume because I don't want to forget. But my story behind Carl Froch, and I want to just give him his flowers. This is about giving him and Tim their flowers and so many great moments over the years. Carl Froch, I didn't really know who he was until he fought Jermaine Taylor. And I'll never forget that fight because it's another fight that I remember watching years ago. It was in 2009. All right. I remember just chilling. At the time, I still had my first apartment. I had a studio apartment at the top. And I remember just watching the fight. I believe the fight might have been on Showtime. And the fight was a really, really good fight. I didn't know who Carl was. I was a Jermaine Taylor fan at the time. And at that time, Jermaine only lost to Kelly Pavlik. He had those two losses against him. Right, but Taylor had a good career. He beat B-Hop twice. He was undisputed and everything. And he went on to fight Carl Froch, who I didn't know who he was. But it was a good fight. Jermaine was winning the fight. And then out of nowhere, Carl Froch destroyed him in the 12th round. The fight was over. All right. And ever since that fight, I followed this guy throughout his career. Just following him around. Now, you can pull up his resume here. He fought Andre Dirrell, another fighter that I was rooting against Carl. Because even though he just beat Jermaine Taylor and I respected him, he's fighting one of my favorite at the time, like up and coming contenders, or prospect or whatever you want to consider Jim. Me and Andre Dirrell and Ward, the way I felt about those two on the come up, I was so excited about those two, and I was just hoping and praying that they would collide one point. That's how I felt about this. This is before the Super 6 and all that. This is what I was like, damn, Dirrell and his highlights, he looked phenomenal. All this time leading up to this Carl Froch fight. And he lost a decision. It was a close fight. It was a good fight. But Carl Froch got him again. All right. So he goes on. He fights Mikhail Kessler. Lost the first fight. Kessler, very respectable fighter. Very good fighter. I've often talked about him because he was part of that 168, that super middleweight class of fighters was so good. Kessler at that time only had lost to Ward. He only had lost to Joe Calzaghe, which is still, Calzaghe is, in my opinion, one of his best wins. All right. Fought Kessler, lost the first fight, lost a decision, but was able to come back and avenge that loss later. He beat Arthur Abraham when Abraham was still extremely dangerous and relevant. Not when Abraham was older, still fighting 5, 6, 7 years after that, where guys are just picking up wins against him. I'm talking about when Arthur Abraham this was a stacked division. All right. Glenn Johnson was old. All right. Glenn Johnson was way past it. That's different. But guys like Arthur Abraham, Mikhail Kessler, Andre Ward, who he lost to as well. He lost to Andre Ward. Good fight, but Ward got him and went on to win the Super 6 tournament. Or what we like to say, he closed the division out. You know what I'm saying? He beat everybody but Lucien Boutte. And I'm talking about Andre Ward. Andre Ward lost to Ward, but he went on to fight Lucien Boutte, a fight that we always wanted to see Ward take. We just never got to Lucien Boutte. Even some people go as far as saying Ward dubbed Lucien Boutte. But Carl Froch went and fought Lucien Boutte and destroyed him, completely annihilated him. Oh my God, I was so hyped because there was so much hype behind Lucien Boutte because he looked so good. He looked so good, yet Carl Froch went in there and destroyed him and made it look easy, And then he went on to fight Mikhail Kessler, like I said, avenged his rematch, and went on and had those two classics against George Groves. And the reason why they were classics is because the amount of people that was at that Wembley Stadium rematch. At that time, I think they had the most amount of people ever sitting in a stadium fight, or one of the all-time highest, and it was such a big deal. And it's a special fight to me in my channel because at that time, that my reaction video to that fight was my most viewed video at that time on YouTube. Because I remember watching it live, and even though we weren't doing live commentary videos yet on YouTube, I did a post-fight reaction right after the fight, and I was so hyped up, and it got like over 6,000 views. And at that time, that might not seem amazing now, but in 2014, it was a big deal to get 6,000 views. It was hard to even get 1,000 views at that time, So it was such a big deal. And the controversy behind the first fight, because Carl Froch was losing the fight. He was getting outboxed by George Groves for a good amount of rounds, and he did come back, and I feel like the stoppage was kind of premature. So they ran it back. They had the rematch, and Carl Froch, got him out of there later on the fight. But both fights were very competitive, and this is another undefeated fighter on Carl Froch's resume. Even a few that weren't undefeated, they were still like only 1 or 2 losses. They were still really relevant. I mean, we go really all the way back. Jermaine Taylor was very relevant. John Pascal was undefeated. I didn't even bring that up. He beat John Pascal when he was undefeated. John Pascal in 2022 going into 2023 is still relevant. He's still relevant today. Today. He was supposed to fight Joshua Buatsi recently. Still relevant, even regardless of the PDs and stuff. That's not good. But he's still actively fighting today. And he still have picked up wins against Marcus Brown recently. So this is what I'm saying about wins lasting and going a long way. He beat an undefeated John Pascal. He beat Jermaine Taylor when he only had lost to Kelly Pavlik. He beat Andre Durrell, who was undefeated, another one. He beat Mikkel Kessler, who had only lost to Ward and Joe Calzaghe. He beat Arthur Abraham when he only had one defeat. He beat Lucien Boutte, who was undefeated. He beat George Gross, who was undefeated. This guy has an amazing, immaculate resume. And not only that, he was knocking guys out. He had a lot of stoppages. He had a lot of classic wars back and forth. This guy absolutely belongs in the Hall of Fame, because this is what I mean about having wins that went a long way. You got wins against undefeated fighters that went on to have great careers. You didn't just beat a bunch of scrubs that disappeared or whatever. You beat them because they were prospects and they never did anything after. All of these guys had great careers. Andre Durrell just picked up another win. All of these guys had great careers. So salute to Carl Froch. Much love to him, because I'm a big fan of him. He's my second guy. Right? Even I rooted against him at least 3 times. I rooted against him. I didn't see his John Pascal fight live. I actually went back. I honestly watched that back later on YouTube. All right. But I did watch a Jermaine Taylor fight live, and I probably watched all of the rest of the fights because I just cared so much about his career. I love watching him fight. He knocked guys out. You know what I'm saying? I don't even think he was the greatest boxer. All right, he had flaws, but he was able to even everything out with his power. I think there's a few things I would say that I wish with Froch. I think the few fights that I wanted to see. I think obviously the Joe Calzaghe was a little too late. That's just like a dream fight in my opinion. I know that's a debate that a lot of British fans like to have. But that would have been a great fight if it were to ever go down. I really wanted to see the James DeGale fight. Now, it might not sound like anything big now, but it was a big deal then because James was another British fighter on the come up, and he had a good run, and it would have been a good fight. You know what I'm saying? That's another fight that I regret not seeing. Outside of that, though, he pretty much fought everybody I wanted to see him face. There was a moment where they were trying to make a Triple G fight. They almost went through with it. I don't know. I think Carl Froch actually pulled out of that. There was a whole mix-up thing there because I know Ward was willing to come down and meet him in between. And I'm talking about Triple G. They turned that down, but they entertained having a Carl Froch fight. Never went down. That would have been cool because at that time, Carl Froch would have been Triple G's best test, greatest test by far. All right, but overall, for the most part, Carl Froch really fought everybody, almost everybody I wanted to see him face, and he retired at a good time. I think if he stayed around a little too long, he would have started taking some losses. And I think that has to do mainly with age and a lot of the younger up and coming guys that's coming up and doing their thing. But Carl Froch, great fighter, definitely a Hall of Famer, without a doubt. And then let's go right into Tim Bradley. Now, Tim, very similar career, in my opinion. Let me just grab a little bit of this coffee real quick. Tim Bradley, very similar career. And what I mean by that, I mean by beating undefeated fighters that were relevant years later. A lot of these guys at 140 that he beat, that was either early in the career or, they were undefeated or maybe just coming off a loss or whatever. Tim did that. 140, I think he ran the division before moving up to 147. You know, there are some fights that I wish there's more fights I wish I got from him for sure. But Tim gave us a very, very good run. You know, I want to start out with his first win, championship win against Junior Witter. All right, a British fighter who was only one loss in. Good performance, close fight. I remember watching that one. Then he went on to beat guys like a Kendall Holt, who was dangerous, very big puncher at the division. Nate Campbell, another good fighter at 140. No, that was a no contest, but still a good fight that he was in. Lamont Peterson, also undefeated. You know, another very good fight. Lamont has done a lot at the division over the years, and at 147 he moved up, had some good success there. Luis Carlos Abreu, who was undefeated. All right, who was undefeated and dangerous, and another big puncher. He took some losses, but he did pick up some good wins. He did knock out Tomas Delorme. I believe that was Delorme's first loss. All right, but good win. Devin Alexander, another fight. Very ugly, nasty fight. Sean Porter went on to do the same thing to Devin Alexander. Tim Bradley, ugly fight. You know, was very physical. You know, Tim has that big bald head. Got some headbutts in there, made it a very, very physical fight. And Sean Porter went on and do the same thing to beat Devin Alexander. But Devin Alexander was a two-time champion. You know, he was a champion at 140. It was a unification match, and you know, Devin Alexander went on to become a champion again, I think, at welterweight. All right, so good win. Joel Casamayor was definitely past it by the time Tim fought him, but another good win. And then he went on to fight Manny Pacquiao. Now, these were some dark times when Tim Bradley fought Manny Pacquiao, because Pacquiao lost the fight on points. Officially, Tim has that win over it. I was on YouTube. It was the early stages, my first year of being on YouTube. And let me tell you something. You know, we've seen other fights that caused a lot of controversy. I think, obviously, Fury in Wilder has probably caused more controversy than any other fight that I've ever seen, because of the whole Glovegate issue. All right. Obviously, Floyd and Manny, just a back and forth, years of YouTubers just going back and forth at each other over that fight. But let me tell you something, man. If you were around when Tim Bradley and Manny Pacquiao had their first fight, all right, and then went on to... Oh, I'm sorry. I'm wrong. I wasn't around for them Pacquiao. I was around for the rematch. All right, I wasn't around yet. I wasn't on YouTube yet when the first fight happened. I'm just talking about the just the way the boxing community felt. The rematch. I remember making a rematch prediction video, and I never received as many hatred comments from any other video, at least at that point. Or even for a while. Probably not into one of my Wilder videos, because you already know how that go. Manny Pacquiao fans were saying some of the most racist comments to me. I had never had to block anyone until those videos. You know, because I made a prediction video, and I was wrong, where I predicted Tim Bradley to win the rematch. And my prediction wasn't based on the fact that I thought Bradley won the first fight, because I didn't think that. I thought Manny won, and I was actually surprised that Bradley got the decision, even though I do believe the fight was close. I do believe the fight was close, though. But with that being said, I made a prediction video based on that Tim would win based on that last 4 rounds of that first fight. I think Tim won. He finished strong. And I thought that was a good reason on why Tim would win the rematch. Now, he went on to lose, and he lost clearly, and he lost the third. But man, those comments that I got, I'll never forget that. At that point, I knew that the Manny Pacquiao fan base were something different. I've never seen anything like it before. And still to this day, never seen anything like it. But he has a win over Manny Pacquiao, a recorded win. Whether you think he won or not, it was a close fight. I actually thought the scorecards were fine. It was just the choice of it. 115, 113, all three. Two of them giving it to Bradley, one of them giving it to Pacquiao. I thought it should be reversed, 115, 113 for Manny Pacquiao, in my opinion. Ruslan Provodnikov, fight of the year. Classic fight. And a fight that Tim has said that it's changed him because of the amount of punches he took in that fight. He took the wrong approach in that fight and took a lot of punches. Went to war with Ruslan. And I think that was one of Bradley's flaws. I think that Bradley could fight any kind of fight. But I think with that fight, he fought the wrong kind of fight. You know, I think he was supposed to fight smart. And there were moments he did. But for the most part, he wanted to show and prove that he was stronger than Ruslan. And that was a big mistake. He ate a lot of punches there. And I actually don't think he won that fight. Now, I don't think it was a robbery because I personally believe that the fight is still scored based on rounds. So even though Ruslan had big rounds and rounds that he hurt Bradley, there were rounds where Bradley boxed and he clearly won. You know, great fight. I haven't seen that fight in a long, long time. It's been 10 years since the fight. Maybe one day, you know, I can just do a live and sit back and watch it. It's a great fight. It's just a great fight. You know what I'm saying? And maybe, you know, I don't know. I'm sure it's probably on HBO Boxing's YouTube or something. Maybe you could just sit back and just have a drink and watch that fight over again. You know, because it was an amazing fight. Moving on. He has a win over Juan Manuel Marquez. And let me tell you something. This is probably Tim Bradley's best performance in his career, in my opinion. His best performance. All right. Marquez, and let me just check to be sure. Marquez at the time was coming off of a knockout win against Manny Pacquiao in that fourth fight. So the hype was all there. You know, and I know this fight, the judges scored a split decision. Tim Bradley won 8 rounds, in my opinion. You know, I remember scoring that fight that way. This was the best boxing I've seen from Tim Bradley. To go from the Manny Pacquiao fight to the Ruslan Provodnikov fight where he went to war and took a lot of damage and perform against Marquez the way that he did. It was that fight there had made me want to see the Floyd Mayweather fight because I've never seen Marquez lose a fight and be outboxed that good. Now, it wasn't on a level as Floyd, but it was close, all right? It was a step below, but it was still a fight where I've never seen Manny Pacquiao beat Marquez the way Bradley did. Bradley clearly outboxed Marquez, all right? Who was a Hall of Famer as well. Marquez was inducted this year, all right, in this recent class. But yeah, Marquez, legend. Tim Bradley, probably his best win. And plus the timing was perfect because Marquez was coming off of the Pacquiao knockout and Timmy was able to school him in a boxing match. Tim went on to lose to Manny Pacquiao second and third time. I think he definitely lost a third time, got knocked down a couple times, and he called it quits after that. I think the Diego Chavez fight was probably one of the more worst performances in his career. I think that was just an ugly fight, but I don't want to put too much blame on Bradley because Chavez had an ugly fight with Brandon Rios. You know, it's just like Chavez was just, for some reason, I don't know, guys was just getting some messy fights with him, you know. It was just an ugly fight. Jesse Vargas is another one of his good wins. You know, Jesse was undefeated at the time, and I know Jesse had lost some other guys. He had some good wins and some good, you know, close fights. You know, I think, you know, he had an up and down career, but Tim was the first to beat him. You know, along with a lot of other fighters, and he went on to beat Brandon Rios when Brandon was still pretty dangerous in the game. And then he had his third fight with Manny Pacquiao in his career with that. Now, a few things about Tim Bradley. And I think he's definitely a Hall of Famer. Him and Carl is two guys that I've definitely been wanting to get in there. Tim Bradley, I wish he fought Amir Khan at 140. That's a fight that should have happened. All right? That is a fight that should have happened. And I wish it didn't it happen. That's all I got to really say. I'm not going to go into who's at fault. It kind of seems like it was Bradley's fault. But that's a fight that I wanted, you know, and they could have gotten that on while they were both in the primes of their career. You know what I'm saying? Floyd Mayweather. Absolutely. Tim Bradley and Floyd Mayweather should have fought. Again, at the time, Top Rank had a stacked stable of fighters. And I like to bring this up often because people tend to forget that the Top Rank was doing a lot of what PBC is doing now because they had a heavy stable of fighter at the welterweight division, which was the big name division at the time. They didn't have to fight the PBC up and coming fighters that wanted to fight their fighters. You know, Sean Porter was around, Tim Bradley was around, you know, Keith Thurman was around. You know, these guys wanted the fights as well. But everything had stayed, you know, business was just like, the politics was like Top Rank for the HBO. And then PBC guys were, before it was PBC, you know, Al Heyman fighters stayed over in Showtime, you know, for the most part. So there were fights that I wanted to see. You had Andre Berto, who was still relevant. You know, I would have loved to see him like take on, you know, some of these guys or whatever. You had Danny Garcia. You know, I mean, there were fights that could have been made, but these guys didn't have the relevant resumes and that Tim Marquez or Pacquiao had. And Top Rank had the younger fighters that they was pulling up. You had Brandon Rios, you know, who had fought. Who's the guy he fought 3 times? He can pull it up real quick. Mike Alvarado. Mike Alvarado. So he had his trilogy with Mike, you know, and was it a trilogy or was it 2 fights? No, because Mike won the first. Yeah, Mike. Okay, it was 3. Mike won the first, and then Rios won the second. So you had young fighters. You know, you had the top 3. You had Pacquiao, Marquez, and Tim. But you had Jim. You had Jesse Vargas. You know, you had Brandon Rios. You had Mike Alvarado. You had, you know, Ruslan Provodnikov. You know, you had fighters that you didn't have to really deal with any of the Al Heyman guys like that because they were all good fighters. But with that being said, Tim Bradley, I would have loved to see him fight Khan and Floyd. Some bonuses, Danny Garcia, you know, Keith Thurman for sure. I was making content requesting that fight. I wanted that fight. You know, people are going to bring up Errol Spence. Yes, Errol Spence was around. He was just coming around when Bradley left. Not so much with him because there were people around prior to Spence that I thought Bradley could have or should have fought. All right, but regardless, Bradley has an incredible resume. And I just want to end it off with this, you know, with Bradley too. Bradley has caught some major heavy disrespect from some fighters. You know, I know Tank recently made some comments about him being trash. And, you know, I don't like these younger fighters just disrespecting the guys that did it before them, the guys that are more proven. Because Tim Bradley and Tank's resume don't compete at all. I mean, even what Tim did at 140 is much better than what Tank is doing at 135, in my opinion. You know, I mean, Tim fought dangerous fights. You know, he fought dangerous fights. You know what I'm saying? And then you got these content creators out here that's been extremely disrespectful to Tim over the years. I don't always agree with Tim. You know, I don't always agree with what he says. You know, he does commentary now. He's doing commentary. Even Carl Froch. I don't always agree with Carl Froch. You know, Carl Froch says a lot of things about some of the younger, specifically AJ, but some other fighters as well. I don't always agree with these guys are saying. You know, I think some of the retired guys do be hated. And I think some of the other younger guys be hating too, you know, or be disrespectful for the guys that did it before them. But some of these content creators, you know, I think you have a job to do and having integrity, you know, and respect. And for the guys that actually go in the ring and do it, you know. And Tim put it all on the line every time he went in that ring. He gave us great fights that he didn't have to fight the way he didn't have to make it entertaining. You know, so I think when content creators, and sometimes I gotta check myself too, you know, because sometimes I've made videos where out of anger, I've definitely said things where I was like, you know, I probably shouldn't have said that. I think that was a little too much. You know, when boxers, you know, found ways to cut corners. But Tim, you know, the amount of disrespect that he's been getting from some of the younger fighters and some of the content creators is ridiculous, man. I mean, Tim's resume shits on just about all of these guys that's fighting right now. You know, Tim's resume, Bradley's resume at 140 and 147 is far superior than a lot of guys that we talk about often now. Far. Without a doubt. You know? And it's about the timing of him fighting them. It's not about them coming off where they got destroyed or, you know, beating guys where they're far past it. No, he's beating some of these guys. Oh, that's another name. Kell Brook. Oh, would I love to see Tim Bradley fight Kell Brook. Oh, I totally forgot about that one. That was another one that I was talking about on the channel that I wanted to see so bad when Kell was undefeated. Another one. Kell Brook, Keith Thurman, two big ones. Floyd and Mir Khan. Those are probably the four big ones that we didn't get. But we did get a lot from him. And I'm happy. And I'm proud of him. And, you know, hopefully, you know, I want him, you know, he does the commentary with Ward. He had a great career, man. Much respect to those two. And I'm going to leave it at that, man. Hopefully if I go, you guys know I will make content like I did this year. And yeah, so I think I'll leave it at that. Congratulations to all the 2023 Hall of Fame inductees. And please, again, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. And smash the like button, hit the thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.